Well, hello and welcome to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Experience, the interview series. And tonight is Q&A number 2. So this is a new thing for us, but Q&A number 2. And we're with our special guest, Sebastien Cotte. And from our interview series, A Father's Journey to Save His Son. This is John Malanca, your host and advocate of the Sacred Plant. But before we begin, I just want to take a moment to remind our listeners that this is for informational purposes only, so we do get quite a bit of that. We're not giving medical or legal advice, only sharing our experience. So please seek a professional in your area before making any final decisions. You're always welcome to call our office. But we're here, but we're with Sebastien Cotte. And I'll give you a little background on Sebastien. He became actively involved in the field of medical cannabis in 2013 while seeking alternative treatments for his son, Jagger, who is 7 years old now, but seeking medical treatments for his son, Jagger. He has a rare terminal genetic disease, and like many other families, they've been forced to become a cannabis refugee. And so Sebastien, Jagger, and Sebastien's wife, Annett, were forced to leave their home state, which is in Georgia, to Colorado. And I think you said 13 months, Sebastien, were you gone for?
Yes, that is correct. We're at 13 months.
And so they moved to Colorado for 13 months to access safe and legal cannabis for Jagger. They're back home in Georgia now, but also Sebastien also serves as an ambassador for the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation, which is an organization that provides education, awareness, and resources to healthcare professionals, patients, and families affected by mitochondrial disease. So I would like to welcome Sebastien this evening, as well as our guests that are listening. And again, I want to apologize for keeping you waiting. The email, I guess, got stuck in the black hole. So we're here and we're starting to fill you up. So if you have any questions tonight for myself or Sebastien, you are always welcome. If you can let us know where you're calling in from, that's always fun to see what our reach is. So, but I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Leah, this evening for helping us get back online. And it's she and her man's anniversary. So happy anniversary to you, and thank you, and I wish you many more years together. So, Sebastien, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. Happy to have you on here. So, so first off, mitochondrial disease is very rare in the U.S. and it's about, I want to say, 20,000 cases a year. Your son, Jagger, has something called Leigh syndrome, which is even more of a rarity. Do you want to touch up on that? And you can start with, your story. I know Sebastien, you started this at when he was 1 year old. So have at it. The spotlight's on you.
All right. So Jagger has a very rare form of mitochondrial disease called Leigh's disease, and it's one of the most severe, aggressive form of mitochondrial disease. He started with, you get different symptoms from it, but we started about 3 months old when we found he had a heart condition, and we didn't know at that time it was mitochondrial disease. Then when he was about 1, we found out he had mitochondrial disease, but we didn't know which kind of mitochondrial disease because it's a very wide array of mitochondrial disease. At the base, a mitochondrial disease is mostly just when your mitochondria, which is the power cell, that's a power. You use the power for your body. When those power cells do not work efficiently, then you get a mitochondrial disease. So you don't produce enough energy. So many things can happen because of that. So what happened with him is, he started with that, and then we had some GI issue where he was not absorbing, and then he had lungs issue. Then we found out when he was in the hospital, we did an MRI, we found out he had lesion in the brain, in the basal ganglia part of the brain, which is the part that controls your movement. So he has a lot of movement disorder. He cannot walk. He cannot sit up. He has no head control, nothing like that. So he's really 100% handicapped. Kids with that disease, when they get a diagnostic before the age of 2, they usually have a life expectancy of 4. So that's why we're told that Jagger will live until about 4. And he just turned 7, so we put him on cannabis right before 4, and that's been a godsend for us. And he's turned 7 in September. It's not a cure for him. He's still very sick. We actually just spent the weekend in the ICU with, I think, pneumonia number 9 or 10, and I think that was his hospital stay number 29, something like that. But we got home a few days ago, and he's a fighter. But cannabis is making his quality of life much better. He's on hospice, so we don't worry so much about quantity of life. We worry about quality of life. And cannabis for quality of life, it's really, really powerful.
Oh, I got chills when you said hospice, and I know that we talked about that earlier in our one-on-one interview with you. So, how long has he been on hospice for?
Well, they actually put him on hospice about when he was about 1. And the reason they did that, it was, he probably was not a hospice patient at that time, but they know he was going to be, but there were no palliative care outpatient for pediatrics in Atlanta. So he was either hospice or nothing, and he was too sick to be on nothing. But he wasn't sick enough to be on hospice. Unfortunately, pretty quickly, he got sick enough to get on hospice. So he's been on hospice. Then we discharged hospice when we moved to Colorado, but we got put into hospice in Denver. So he was still in the hospice in Colorado.
Yeah.
And we get back on hospice when we got over here. So he's technically been on hospice for almost 6 years. But the beginning, he probably should have not been on hospice, but now he's definitely an hospice patient.
Gotcha. So again, for our attendees that are popping in right now, so first off, I want to apologize. The email, I guess, didn't go out. And so when we started and I saw 0, which normally we have 70 or 80 right away, I knew something was wrong. So thank you for your patience. Thank you, Sebastien, for you being patient as well. So we're on with Sebastien Cotte, father of Jagger. And so if you have any questions, please raise your hand. If you want to be put on screen, I don't know if anybody did that last time, but you're more than welcome. We can put you on as a panelist, and we can do a video live Q&A, which for this season we thought we'd try this new format, and I'm liking it so far. So Sebastien, here's a question from Joanne from down in Australia, I guess. So thank you Joanne, for your first question. And she's asking, is it better to vape to get more potency? And so, this is, if you want to just share, we're not giving you medical advice. We're just sharing firsthand experience of a father and his son. So the question is it better to vape to get more potency? Plus, and again, this is not a one size fits all, but Joanne's asking, plus what dose for a child who's on Ritalin and for ADHD, as well as mood issues between doses? And I don't know if that is something that you worked. And I don't know, Sebastien, can you tilt your screen down? Just
better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Yep.
And they're using 50 milligram bottles. So I don't know if that's something that you can answer, and if not, Joanne, I can pass it on to some of our medical professionals. So Sebastien is not a medical professional; he's a father, and but we're here for you guys.
Yeah, so the first part of the question about the vaping. So we do not vape with Jagger because he does not follow command. He's even if he's 7 years old, he's probably, honestly, the mental capacity of a 3 months old. So, but I know quite a few people that do. Vaping for children is obviously very controversial. Not as much for adult. Again, not a medical professional, but the good thing about vaping is that the onset is extremely quick. It's much faster than anything else. With Jagger, we actually use oil because he can't swallow anything by mouth. So we put oil in his tube. So that takes 45 minutes to an hour, and he goes to the first pass metabolisms, and we lose a lot of bioavailability. So vaping, it's good for very quick onset. So I would say for like PTSD or severe pain, vaping is great because you get that hit and you really get the effect of the cannabis right away. It doesn't last as long. So yes, depending on the situation, it could be really good. But again, it's very hard for kids to do that, and it's very controversial to have a kid do vaping, depending where you are. The second part of the question about the dosing, I know some kids with some autisms and some issues like that. And honestly, it's all over the place. Some of them do really well with tiny dose, and some of them do well with really high doses. So you can probably try to talk to a doctor or somebody that has a little bit more knowledge. But one thing that you will find out about cannabis is that it's extremely individualized. And even people with the same disease don't always use the same strain or the same dosing. So you have to do a lot of trial and errors. And so I always recommend parents that talk to me is to keep a journal. keep a journal of what you try, which dose and when. And then, if it doesn't work, give it a couple of weeks, try something else, a new dose, and then look back at what works better. If you don't take notes, then you won't ever know what's working better. And also, the very important thing that a lot of people forget, when you change something, either the regular medication you're on or your cannabis, or if you have your cannabis separately, like your CBD and then your THC, only make one change at a time. Because if you make more than one change at a time, you're not going to know where it comes from, if it's helping or hurting. So one change at a time, hold it for a week or two, keep quick note, good details notes. That's honestly the best advice I can give.
We even tell that to our adult patients treating themselves as well. Keep great notes, see what you're changing. You change everything and they say, oh, it didn't work. What did you change? I don't know which one it was. So
exactly.
Again, I know a lot of people are signing in again right now, and I'm going to be a broken record when I say this, but I just want to say thank you everybody who is patiently waiting to get on. We had a little technical difficulty with our email that went out, so I know that we just resent it. So thank you for your patience here. So if you have any questions for Sebastien, please, you're more than welcome to send them up or raise your hand and I'll put you live and we can talk to you directly. Again, this is Sebastien Cotte and we're talking about a father saving his son, Jagger. And so I'll just go down some questions here that you and I have talked about before. You mentioned that Jagger has been on hospice for the last, since he was age 1. How many prescription drugs was he on before you thought about medical cannabis as an alternative?
Well, one thing about hospice is that they will give you about as much drug as you want because it's all about quality of life, right? Quantity doesn't matter anymore. So they didn't give us everything right off the bat, but by time we get on cannabis, Jagger was on over 20 meds, and he was on oxycodone, morphine, Keppra, baclofen, Neurontin, Valium, and methadone, the main one, as probably a year and a half, 2-year-old baby, which is a lot. And then we were on unlimited dosing. And that's, the thing with hospice is you give a dose of morphine of 10 milligrams, which is a really big dose. You wait for a little bit. It doesn't work. You give another 10 milligrams. It doesn't work. You give another 10. If I end up putting him in respiratory distress and he end up, overdosing, that's a risk you take. And that's what happened with hospice. So the great thing about the cannabis is we're still on a lot of medication. As, I want to make sure people is clear. And the other thing I want to say, which is very important also, if you were to go ahead and wean a medication, never, ever do that by yourself. Weaning can be extremely dangerous. So always do it with a medical professional. Get on the schedule. Ask them to give you which dose to wean week by week. And don't improvise. Don't do it on your own. This is really, really important because it can be dramatic if you wean on your own. But with doctors, we're able to wean him of the oxycodone 100%. We were able to wean him of the Keppra, which is a seizure medication, 100%. And we were able to wean him of the morphine, I'd say about 90%. Morphine was always as needed for us, but when it was really bad, we used to give at least 3 to 4 to 5 doses a week. So not quite every day. Now we give about 3 doses a year. So on a really, really, really bad day. So we probably 95% of the morphine. But again, everything was done with medical professional. And, all those meds have such horrible side effect for anybody, kids or adults. So anytime you can take less of them and have something with very little side effect like cannabis, it's great.
So back to with all the medications that you're on. So what made you think, and who introduced you, and how did you find out about medical cannabis as an alternative? I mean, you're in Georgia. We did an article on that years ago at the United Patients Group. That was Georgia. We called it Georgia, the pretend state.
Yeah. Well, actually, how I got involved with this was I watched CNN one day, and I was watching the weed documentary, which a lot of parents watch that, and I was just sitting there, and I'm just thinking like, there might be something to this, So I started researching, and one thing I think I already told you guys, but there is nobody that does research like a special need parent. We're doing research better than the CIA and better than the FBI. There's nobody that research things like special need parents. Because that's our life. That's what we have to.
Yeah.
And so I start researching cannabis and I say, it look like it could work. And then the more I research, I say, okay, it might not work, but even if it doesn't work, it doesn't have any side effect. It's not going to kill my kid. Like the morphine or the oxycodone. So I say, I think I have to give it a shot. I have to try it. And after, long story short, we tried to pass a bid in Georgia. We couldn't do that. So we moved to Colorado to have access, and it made a huge difference in Jagger's life and in our life almost right away.
And so with you leaving, I know you and I talked about this before, but with you leaving your home, being a cannabis refugee, you were used to your doctors, you were used to the treatment, you were used to your schedule at the hospital, and it being an illegal state, how did you bring this up to your doctors about trying medical cannabis? Were they open to it? Did you even talk about this with your doctors in Georgia? I know the doctors in Colorado were clearly more open-minded than they were in Georgia.
Yes and no. Depend on the doctor, really. But what happened is, because I was really involved and I co-founded Georgia's Hope, which is a group of parents that, so right away I was really involved with it. We had a lot of articles. We were on TV. So a lot of the doctors, if they watch anything or read any of the newspaper in Georgia, they knew then, I was involved with this. The hospice team has always been very, very supportive. Some of these other doctors, not so much. But, the funny thing about this, and I don't know if I said that last time, but when we had a great neurologist for Jagger when he was first put on a hospice and when he was first in the hospital. He was actually a guy from France that was about an hour away from my house, and he lived an hour away from my house. Now, living in the US all his life, but great neurologist, we love him. But he retired. So we had to find a new one. We retired right before the cannabis. So I know you would have probably been a little bit more open-minded to it, but he retired. So then we went to the new neurologist, and it was a woman, a doctor, and she's great, and she's a little bit younger, and she's a little bit more outside of the box thinker. So we told her, and at first she wasn't super warm about it. She said, well, I heard a few things about it can help for seizures, but I'm not really sure. And we kept in touch with her the entire time we were in Colorado. And we sent a picture of Jagger. We sent us, we say, hey, he went from 10 to 12 seizures a day to 3 or 4. And guess what? He's off the Keppra, which she put us on. So when we came back to Georgia, we actually went to see her and we told her, and she was just like, wow, he looks like a different kid.
Wow.
And it really changed her mind, because I'll tell you that since that time, she actually asked me if I would be willing to share my numbers with some of her patients if they have questions. And since that time, she sent about 3 families to me that are patients of her that had questions about cannabis. So instead of saying, no, I don't want to do it, she actually sent families to me for resources, as a resource. And now she's also signing off on the card to be on the registry in Georgia. And she's a doctor in one of the main hospitals in town. And there's not a lot of the doctors signing are usually the private practice. We don't see a lot of the doctor on the large group or hospital signing off on the card. And now she's signing off on the card for some people and sending me people if they have questions. So, one doctor at a time, we're able to change mine. Now, there's always going to be doctor that will be against it. I even heard a story of patients of kids my doctor want to call child services just for the parents using CBD. My best advice, honestly, if you do that, it's tough. I'm sorry, you should have to do that. But my best advice is to change the doctor. When they are that close-minded, then it's not only they're against it, but they want to report you potentially for using it. You got to get out of there as soon as possible.
So you being in Georgia now, and your doctor that's open-minded, who she's signing off on the patient, can you share? Georgia's tough because they have to go through and do a bunch of other things to say, okay, all of these you tried failed. Now you're able to try medical cannabis. You can't just go straight into try medical cannabis like you can in other states like California, Colorado, Washington, Oregon. Can you touch up on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So our law is getting, it's better than it was before. But in Georgia, in order to have, to get put on the registry, when we call the low THC registry, you have to have one of 15 qualifying conditions or be a hospice patient. And that's regardless of the condition. We added that last year. So if you have one of those 15 conditions, you have to go to your doctor and you have to get your doctor to sign off. We had a lot of feedback from the doctor when we developed the program, when they did not want the liability because it's still a Schedule I substance federally. And I'm sure people hear that all the time. It's a problem. So what happened is we made the form in a certain way. Then all the form does for the doctor is when the doctor certify that you have a condition, nothing else. So we take all the liability off the doctors. And you say, yes, the doctor that signed for Jagger say, yes, Jagger has a mitochondrial disease. Here's a signature. And once this happens, the doctor enters the information online And we think there's one thing about Georgia. We might have a lot of problems, but one thing that we're good at is a registry, because within less than a week, sometimes 3-4 days, you can get your card. Now, here's the main problem. We have 34, I just got the numbers last week. We have 3,400 people registered in the state of Georgia. 3,400 people that have a card to legally have possession of medical cannabis. However, we have no access of medical cannabis in Georgia, no legal access. So the main problem with having no legal access is that we cannot go to a dispensary to buy it. Everything we're going to do in Georgia, everything we're going to bring, is going to be illegal. Now, once we're back in Georgia, it's legal. But to bring it back to Georgia, that's where we have to break laws. And, it's a ridiculous situation. We should not be put in such a situation, but that's the way it is. We've been trying to change that and add cultivation and distribution in the state of Georgia. However, the governor and law enforcement do not want that to happen. They're very, very scared. So as of today, we technically have 3,400 criminals in the state of Georgia. Parents,
right? Children?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, parents, patient, cancer patient, older people. We have 3,400 people registered that have the right to have cannabis, but not the right to buy cannabis.
Yeah. And that's tough. A lot of other states too that are CBD only states, or even medically legal states, some of them still have, epilepsy is okay, but cancer is not on there. I'm sorry, if you have cancer, you don't qualify. I mean, I think that's just wrong. So again, everyone that's been signing in here, so I appreciate, and my apologies. I guess there was a technical difficulty of the email that we thought went out and didn't go out, and it was in the holding pattern. So thank you for, I know you guys are probably waiting, and now you're on here, but we're on with Sebastien Cotte. We're talking about his son, Jagger. And I just had so if you have any questions, please either raise your hand and I'll put you live on the camera with us, or you can send a message here and I'll read your question on air. So we have Pedro, and Pedro, if you can let us know where you're calling in from, it's always good to hear where everyone's from. But he's asking, I heard that Dr. Sally Schultz recently talking about the BX protocol for mitochondrial dysfunction. Not so much a topic for this discussion, but I was wondering if it was something that you and your family had tried.
No, I'm actually not aware of that, so I am going to look it up. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Pedro. He's calling in from Southern California, so I appreciate that. So if anybody else wants to join too.
Thank you, Pedro. I will look it up, so I appreciate it.
Gotcha. And so you being a cannabis refugee, and I'm certain that we have a lot of our listeners this evening that are considering becoming a cannabis refugee. Today in our office, I had 2 calls from people that wanted to become a cannabis refugee, and they were asking if, actually, maybe you can help me out. Maybe they're listening tonight. Are there any organizations that help families that have to move to different states to become a cannabis refugee, but also help for financial reasons, either in moving costs or medicine costs? Do they even exist? Because I don't know of any.
The answer will be yes and no. In Georgia, we had some local organization that would help. One of them was a state rep that actually created an organization to help people move once we couldn't pass the bill. That's kind of a unique case. What you're more likely to find is when you move. For example, when I moved to Colorado, there's a great organization called American Medical Refugee. And they are at Colorado. They only deal with Colorado right now. I think they were looking at extending to California, but they're in Colorado. And they do sometimes partner with people to get discounted oil or things like this. But what they do mostly is something that people don't think about, but it's also very important. It's a support, especially around the holidays. You got to remember when you're leaving your state, you're leaving your family, your support system, your church, your friends, everybody, right? And then now you're in a new state, you don't know anybody, and it's Halloween, and it's Thanksgiving, and it's Christmas, and you're by yourself. So that organization in Colorado, American Medical Refugee, they actually organize parties where you get free food, and they give you a turkey for Thanksgiving.
Oh, nice.
And they do things like that. So it's still small. It's just a Colorado. But it's a great organization. Obviously, like everything else, funding is always, hard to get, that. It's always hard to get funding on anything. But they're a great organization and they help. So not so many people will find an organization to help to move. But once you get to the States, there are local resources. There are sometimes caregivers that will give you discounted product, maybe for the few months. If you go to a state that has a home grow, there are people there willing to show you how to grow your own cannabis if you want to do that. Now, I'll tell you up front, it's not the easiest thing to do if you have a sick kid. It's not super hard, but when you have a sick kid, it still takes time to attend to the plant. So keep that in mind. It's not as easy as it sounds if you have other commitment. But a lot of people, what we do is a GoFundMe. And then share that on Facebook and all your friends to get the money to make the trip. I'm gonna be very honest with you guys, with everybody. It's really expensive. It takes a toll financially, mentally, physically on you, but the financial aspect is very, very tough because you're leaving everything. If you're going to Colorado, for example, the price of an apartment in Colorado is sky-rise since this whole cannabis craze. California, we're not even talking about California. California's always been really expensive, but California is probably much worse. Washington and Oregon are starting to get really, really expensive too. So the best thing you can do is get as much saving as possible. You might not be able to find a job right away. If you can keep your job, you might not be able to find a job right away. So keep that in mind. There's many, many things to look at. It's not just packing and living. Is where you going to live, how you going to afford the medication, how you going to afford food, how you going to afford your doctors there. If you're on Medicaid or Medicare for your states, that might not always transfer to another state, especially if you're like on some kind of waiver program. Like Jagger is on waiver for Georgia, because he has disability. That program doesn't exist in Colorado. So in Colorado, he didn't have any Medicaid to help him out. There's so many things to think about, but, I'll be happy to answer some questions later. I'll be happy if John reach out, in particular cases. But again, American Medical Refugee is the best source of information I can think of.
Perfect. I appreciate it. And that was one of my next questions here. What advice do you have for families that are even considering traveling and becoming a medical refugee, medical cannabis refugee? And you answered that. So thank you. So for the people that just signed in here, again, this is John Malanka, your host and advocate for the Sacred Plant. And I just wanted to welcome you to the Healing Secrets Experience interview series. Tonight, this is Q&A number 2. And this is our special guest, Sebastien Cotte, from our interview series, A Father's Journey to Save His Son. And his name is Jagger. But we just want to, again, before we continue on, I just want to take a moment to remind our listeners that this is for informational purposes only. We are not giving medical or legal advice, only sharing our experiences. Sebastien sharing his experience. So please seek professional help in your area before making any final decisions. You can always call us. I'm more than happy to share what other families have gone through. So again, I just wanted to thank you for being on. So I do have another question for you here.
Sure.
When you did try to figure out what strains and doses work best for you, you touched up on this and you were taking your notes, and you're taking a lot of notes of what worked, what didn't work. Did you have any in this trial and error that did not work or made Jagger's condition worse?
Actually, I did. One thing that did not work for him at all, did not make him worse, but didn't work is THCA. For some weird reason,
did not.
THC did not. So Jagger, as of today, use CBD, THC, and CBN. Those are great. We had some strain of THC that did not work. As a strain I bought in the dispensary once, I tried it. I make my own oil with it, and it didn't work. He started screaming again. He started really having pain. And so we're with my wife. We're trying to figure out what happened. And we look back and we say, oh, wait, like 4 days ago, we changed his THC. So we stopped it. We went back to the strain we had before, and he was fine. So we knew he was, again, one change at a time, just good notes. We were able to find out that there's a certain strain that didn't work for him. Unfortunately, you have to do a lot of trial and errors. That's the issue. And when you're a non-legal state like Georgia, it's almost impossible. But when you're in Colorado or California, it's much, much easier. If something doesn't work, you go to the dispensary, you get something else. Obviously, it's not cheap, but, So yes, some stuff don't work. And some kids don't do well with CBD, and some kids need high THC. Some kids are sensitive to THC and don't do well with THC. So unfortunately, I wish there were a handbook and we can just tell you, try this for this disease, it's going to work and make you better. It doesn't work like this. And if you want to even make it more complex, which I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but now you have to look at terpenes too. It's not just a cannabinoid anymore, it's a terpenes. We're starting to find out that terpenes can be very powerful and can actually change how the cannabis work. And some strain without terpene could help or no help. Or if your cannabis is not strong enough, maybe adding some terpenes can help. So trial and errors, again, good notes. Keep a journal, very important.
Gotcha. And you and I see eye to eye on this in regard to CBD is not, a lot of people think CBD is the medical portion of the cannabis plant and THC is a recreational portion. I know this answer. Can you share My percentage was 75, and I know you said about 90%. But a lot of families are using CBD, and they add a little THC, and it will improve. Like I said, I said 75%, and you said 90%. So we do see eye to eye on that. So will you share your story about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also good to make the distinction that now, those days, there are products on the market that are isolated CBD. Those products could be very pure, up to 99.9% pure CBD. And, it's a green rush out there. Everybody's going to try to sell you something, especially if you're a parent. You're vulnerable, you're hurting, your kid is hurting, you want to help them. And people are going to try you stuff and say, I was the best, the purest CBD. Anytime somebody tries to sell you an isolate, all I got to say is Google something called the entourage effect. It's from Dr. Meshulam, discovered in 1988. And he showed, and the study that back it up, and he shows that if you use a product, what we call a whole plant or a full spectrum product that has all the cannabinoids, all the terpenes, so CBD would have a little bit of THC, a little bit of CBG, a little bit of CBN, whatever it may be. Those products work much, much better than an isolated product like a CBD isolate that would be just CBD with no THC, no terpenes, nothing like that. Again, it's called the entourage effect, and it's real, and we can see it. We see it all the time. CBD is great. I mean, I'm not going to, CBD is great. It's great for seizures. A lot of kids, they help. And it's usually the first thing you try because CBD is pretty much, even if it's a little bit grayish, it's legal almost everywhere. We just talked about Indiana earlier. There's a few exceptions, and Kansas is another really tough state. But it's pretty much legal everywhere. So that's what people try first. My big advice is if you try CBD product first, you get it, in the store in your state, or you get it online, and it does not work, please do not give up on cannabis. Because just because CBD doesn't work does not mean cannabis is not going to work. Maybe CBD doesn't work because it doesn't have enough THC with it. Maybe CBD is not good for you like THCA is not good for Jagger. And maybe CBN is what's good for you. And maybe THCA is what's good for you. So just because you try CBD and it doesn't work, please do not give up.
So you're talking in different states, but you're talking about CBD from hemp. So having access to CBD from hemp. And if that's the only thing that you have access to, try it. Yes. Have you seen higher grade CBD from U.S. over China, over Europe? One thing I was speaking to a CBD specialist today, and actually he was a plant scientist, and he mentioned that the hemp that is from China and here in the U.S., the hemp from China as well as Europe, they cannot import it in because it's made from, it has seed and stalk in it, where the hemp from the U.S. is made with the flower and the bloods and the terpenes. Is that, have you come across that as well?
I haven't really.
It was the first I heard of it today. That's why.
No, I haven't really come across of that. What I always tell people is be really careful with anything coming from China, not just CBD, anything coming out from China. What we have seen before in the past is China, they're using industrial hemp, and they're using it for making ropes or clothing, or, the hemp plant is amazing. It can do so many things. But then they have a byproduct or the waste of that, and they turn that into a paste, and they send that to the US, and they sell it to a company that run it to filters, maybe a couple filters to think like it's clean, and they're selling that as hemp oil, in your health store. That's really bad. That's really bad because obviously, first of all, it's not pure, clean. It's a byproduct. It's a waste of something else. It doesn't come with lab testing. If you don't know what you're getting, if you're not sure, ask for labs. I mean, it's not, if somebody cannot give you labs on a product, run away. I mean, it's just not worth it. There's many labs. We could spend probably an entire show talking about labs. But, in a nutshell, microbial, check for mold, E. coli, salmonella, solvent. We had a conversation a bit earlier. Know how it's extracted. If it's extracted with hexane, for example, run away. That's very dangerous. Can give you cancer. If it's extracted with butane or propane or alcohol, make sure it's purged the right way. Get residual solvent testing. And then the most important one, if you're talking about industrial hemp, if you're getting your oil from industrial hemp, get a heavy metal test. And the reason I say that is because the hemp plant is amazing. And one thing it does is called bioremediation or phytoremediation, and it cleans up the soil. And by that, it's putting the toxin of the soil, which is great in places like Fukushima or Chernobyl, where there's a nuclear incident. You can clean the soil in dozens and dozens of years faster than if you were not doing anything with putting hemp. But if you put the industrial hemp and they're using that to make your CBD oil, then I've seen it where there's arsenic and lead get into the oil. So if your base of your oil or CBD oil is industrial hemp, get a heavy metal test. And if you can provide that, do not use it.
You mentioned arsenic, and so a lot of times hemp is called mop weed.
Correct.
Because it does suck up everything. And we had in our last year when we had our live Q&As like this, we had one of our followers. She lived in New Jersey. Her mother lived in the state of New York, and they were taking a hemp product. They were finding toxins and metals in her mother's blood. So I recommended, of course, getting a test on that, and a heavy metals test, and it came back with arsenic.
Yeah,
it came back with ours. So if you're out there listening tonight and you are purchasing even medical cannabis, always demand that you are getting the most up-to-date test result. Yep. A lot of them will show you test results from last year, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 2 months ago. Make sure it's an up-to-date test result. Did you run into that? You being from Georgia, it might have been kind of scary having to go to Colorado, not knowing where to go, who to trust. But I'm certain everything that you put in your son's body is lab tested. And so.
No, absolutely. I got lucky enough, and when I got involved in Georgia, I met actually a guy from Georgia that moved to Colorado, and I was a grower, and he's actually the guy that created Haleigh's Hope. So I got friend, I became friend with him, and used a lot of his product, and everything he has is lab tested. If I were to go to a dispensary and buy some flower to make some oil, which I'd done when I live in Colorado, if the dispensary did not have any lab on it, because in Colorado it's not as always mandatory to have lab in Colorado, I will make the oil and then I will take it to the lab myself. So I will never give Jagger anything when I don't have a full panel of labs on it. It's immune compromised. If anything has salmonella or E. coli or mold or arsenic or lead, it could be really dramatic for him. So yeah, everything I give Jagger is lab tested.
Good. Here's a question that came in here from Susie. I understand Jagger's part of a federal lawsuit. Can you tell us about that? So it sounds like Susie either followed our story the other night or follows your story on in the news. You want to touch up on that?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a federal lawsuit from a Haleigh PC in New York. It's a law firm, and there's 5 people on the lawsuit. There's Jose Belen, which is a veteran out of Florida that has PTSD. There's a little girl called Alexis Bortel, which is amazing. She's 12 years old. She moved from Texas to Colorado about the same time as we did, became a medical refugee. We got very close from that family. They're great people. She kind of like Jagger, except even probably harder because she was, I believe 10 when she moved. So she left France, she left her school, she left everything behind to move to Colorado. She's been seizure-free for over 2 years in Colorado by using CBD and THC. She's been seizure-free, so she's a part of the lawsuit. The Cannabis Culture Club, which is an association out of New York City. Jagger is a plaintiff, and Marvin Washington, NFL player, Super Bowl champion with, I believe he was a New York Jets or the Denver Broncos. I forgot where he got his ring, but he got a ring. So this lawsuit is suing Jeff Sessions, not him personally, suing Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General and the head of the DEA, which right now is nobody. Used to be Chuck Rosenberg, but he's gone. He lost his job. And it's not a class action lawsuit. We're not asking for money. We're not asking for anything like this. What we're asking for is when we're asking a judge and we're trying to show the judge to understand that cannabis should never be a Schedule I substance. It does not have the requirement to be a Schedule I substance, and it's unconstitutional for it to be a Schedule I substance for many reasons, but mostly for the 10th Amendment that gives the state right to do their program, for restricting the travel, which is a right you have under the Constitution, and you restrict Alexis and Jagger travel because they can't leave the states because they can't take the cannabis with them. So it's a lawsuit that we obviously hope to win. The government is obviously saying you don't have a case. Cannabis is a Schedule I. I do believe we have a case for several reasons. If you look at the definition of a Schedule I substance, it's highly addictive, high risk of abuse, and no medical purposes. None of those 3 things apply to cannabis. Also, the US government has a patent on many patents, but one of them, 6630507, on cannabis as antioxidant and neuroprotectant. So right there, they're telling you that cannabinoid have medical properties, but at the same time, they tell you it's a Schedule 1. So we hope we have a good case. We hope we're going to win this. We know it's going to be a long, it's going to be drawn out. But we have a first oral argument in a couple of weeks. I'll be flying to New York for that. Very excited. My first time in a federal courtroom. Maybe not my last, but my first one. So very excited to get to New York and get this moving along.
Gotcha. And so because of this, you have become a real activist and changed these, and it's all because of the love of a father. And you've changed. Is this your full-time job?
No, actually, all of this cannabis thing I'm doing this on the side as a volunteer.
Yeah.
I do this because I just want to give back. This plant gave so much to Jagger and to my family and to my wife and to I just want to give back. So no, I have a regular job. I work for a Fortune 500 company. I'm a sales rep, sales manager, and I go around the country and I sell stuff. I've been doing it for 13 years. It's a good job. It pays the bills, but I'm lucky enough and it allowed me to take some time off and go around the country and advocate for medical cannabis.
Do you have this? So that's great. So your company supports you on this.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody knows what I'm doing,
Gotcha.
but the one that do, and then they let me take my vacation days. I mean, a lot of the time when I travel to a state to do a class or to teach something or to go to a conference, I just take my vacation days because we can go on vacation with Jagger anyway. So I got those days and I'm not using them. I might as well use them and do something good with them.
Yeah. No, a friend of mine who I shared with you last time, who's from Georgia, he moved to California as a cannabis refugee. And when he applied for the job, they said, "Why would you leave your job that you've been with for years to come out here and you're getting less pay?" And he shared with them what they did, and they were very, very supportive. And I won't name the company, but it was a big corporate America company, which I thought was great that they supported their workers that way. So let me ask you something about the human rights issue, and I have our issues with this. Do you think medical cannabis and not having full access is becoming a human rights issue? I know when Corinne's father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer metastasized to his brain, we were so lucky. And the only reason he's alive today, and we tried it, is because we were very fortunate that we happen to live in a legal state. When we shared that the U.S. government does hold patents on medical cannabis as medical value, but also puts it as a Schedule 1 with no medical value. And he's a very humble man. And he said, "How come no one's suing the U.S. government for murder?" And we did a story on that. We did an article, and it got a lot of coverage. And it makes sense because we have so many patients and families and doctors calling us from all over the country, all over the world, that don't have legal and safe access to medical cannabis, which you were in that same position where you were forced to uproot your family, and drive, and your 2-hour car trip turned out to be what, 6, 7, 8 days is what you said because of Jagger's condition?
6 days from from Atlanta to Denver, 6 days.
Yeah.
Six horrible days.
Horrible days. It's stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. And that's what happens to you at night, every night too. If you want to share with our listeners tonight, you've devoted your life to your son. And I think that's incredible that you and Annett have done that. You shared with me tonight that, Jagger, sleeps in your room. You guys go to bed around, would you say, around 2:00 in the morning every night and try to get
usually later than that, but yeah.
But I mean, you sleep with one eye open and both ears open.
Absolutely. I mean, you learn to do that, and it's never anything I ever imagined I'd be doing. I mean, to be honest, when we didn't know if Jagger was going to be a boy or a girl, and not any matter. But when he was born, he was a little boy. I'm thinking I'm going to take him to soccer games. I'm going to teach him to play this and that. I'll take him to France for vacation. We'll travel the world. Annett and I always love to travel and say we'll travel the world with him. And obviously none of that happened. Now it's kind of like, let's just make sure we can keep him alive today, because tomorrow's never a guarantee, especially with a kid like Jagger. And we lost him. We almost lost him many times. I mean, he actually was resuscitated a few times in his life already, where he coded. So there's no guarantee. You enjoy every day, and you do what you got to do. We never asked for this, but you just do it. You don't think about it. It becomes second nature. And we have a really rough schedule, but we're used to it. And we sleep when we can. It's not a lot, but it's enough. And then, you just do what you got to do, and you just don't think about it, and you just do it, and you make sure your kid has what he or she needs.
I mean, I did that with Corinne for 4 months, and
Yeah.
I would do it for another 500 years.
Yep.
And so I applaud you. It's just like you said, it's what you do, and it's second nature, and that became second nature to us, and so. But let me see. I have another question from Pedro. So if anybody's out there this evening has any questions, this is from Pedro. I wanted to share another story. I bought the series last summer, went to a concert with some friends, and heard that the wife had developed a third case of breast cancer. This is stage 4B. I shared my login with her, but didn't hear anything several months. So actually, we'll take that offline if you want to, if you want to do that. But it looks like she's down to stage 2 now. So congratulations on that.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great. So I never want to say cannabis is the secret golden ticket. But I've seen it help a lot of people. I've seen it help a lot of people. So back to Sebastien and Jagger. So Jagger, for the people that have just joined us a little late, and again, our apologies that the email did not go out. Jagger has a mitochondrial disease, and mitochondrial disease is very rare. Here in the U.S., I think it's about 20,000 in the U.S. A year, cases a year. What Jagger has is even rarer than that, and it's called Haleigh syndrome. So I know you touched up on that earlier, but the people that have joined us late, you want to just touch up one more time about what Haleigh syndrome is?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a very rare form of mitochondrial disease. It's one of the most progressive, aggressive form of mitochondrial disease. It can affect many different parts of your body, but usually something's wrong with your organs, a lot of your organs, because your body doesn't produce enough energy. So as you were a baby, even an embryo, a lot of your organs do not form correctly, and as you're growing, you don't get the energy supply that you need. So Jagger has lesion in his brain. He has a lot of chronic lung issues. He cannot eat anything by mouth because he has aspiration, so he has a feeding tube. He has a lot of GI issues. And he has a lot of muscle pain, lactic acid building up in his muscle, and that's kind of what's a lot of the thing wrong with him. Some other people with mito might have liver and bladder issue, and it kind of change for everybody. Jagger also has a heart condition; he has cardiomyopathy, so it's kind of different for many people depending on what you have. But it's as a base, your body doesn't produce enough energy, so your organs do not form and your body does not function properly because it doesn't have enough energy to function properly. That's a quick explanation.
Gotcha. And so with cannabis, did you ever run into, and I'm certain a lot of families out there are afraid to talk about it because with their families, with their church, with their peers, did you ever run into that? And did you get any grief from anybody that, when they heard you were giving your child medical cannabis?
I haven't really. I mean, other than maybe like some people I don't know comment on, like if I was on a news story,
yeah,
or if I were on Facebook. I don't pay attention to that because I don't know those people. And you're never going to make everybody happy. It's always going to be controversial. Somebody a couple of days ago told me, how can you give THC to your son? It's not going to help him, and it's going to hurt him because he's helping developing brain. And I say, well, my son doesn't have a developing brain. He has lesion in his brain, so it doesn't matter. So it's going to help him. I say, and I say, yeah, I do not think you should give THC to a normal healthy kid. Absolutely. Just the same. I don't think you should give them a beer or a glass of wine or a shot of vodka. It's the same thing. But we're not talking about normal developing kids here. We're talking about sick kids that are in some cases like Jagger dying or at least having seizures. And just remember thinking about seizures. One seizure can kill you. You can be the healthiest kid in the world. You have one seizure and you can die from it. I see that happen all the time. And it's heartbreaking because those kids are not even sick and they have one seizure and boom, they're gone. So again, we're not talking about normal, regular kids. We're talking about kids that have medical issue, and you got to do what you got to do. And I can tell you that giving cannabis, even THC, is much safer than giving morphine and fentanyl and all the opiates. Now we're up to 190, I think, 2 people a day in America is dying from opiates overdose. That's ridiculous, and that's because we are opiates a prescription nation, and cannabis can change that to a point. No, I get some grief not from people I really know personally, but I honestly don't care. I'm going to do what's best for my kid. I know what's best for my kid, and I'm going to do what's best for my kid.
Gotcha. So any of these doctors that you used to work with prior to, I guess, being in the media like you are now, and the doctors that you said, they weren't on board. So what did you recommend? Fire them. And we've shared this with a lot of patients that we work with here in California. A lot of seniors we work with. I always ask them, have you discussed it with your doctor? And they even said, I'm gonna act like you haven't asked me that question, and if you do use cannabis, I'm gonna ask you to find another doctor. And I asked, we speak at senior communities quite a bit, and I said, well, what'd you do? She said, I fired my doctor. So I know you mentioned that about firing your doctor. Have any of these doctors that you've come along in your path come back to you and say, you know what, you've educated me? I know that one doctor that you did.
Yeah, a neurologist, and then a mitochondrial disease. We have a mitochondrial disease specialist. No, she was very much from the beginning say, yeah, I think you should try that. And yeah, absolutely. She asked me for information. I sent her articles when I find a very nice, important article.
Good.
And now she's actually spoke at a conference last year on autism and cannabis, and how cannabis can help with autistic kid.
Beautiful.
So, and she's educating herself doing that. So yeah, so I actually had a couple of doctors that went from, either not against it, but probably neutral, like, yeah, it's okay, whatever, to actually now pushing for it because they've seen the difference it made in Jagger's life.
Sorry, I zapped out for a second there. So if you heard a blank, it was on my end here too. So what can people do to help other kids like Jagger get legal access to medicine? What if they're not in a legal state? I know we probably have a lot of families out here who aren't in legal states or legal countries. What would you recommend doing before uprooting your life?
Well, it's tough. I say the first thing you got to do is try CBD, because you can get that probably in every state, more or less legally. Is it going to work from everybody? Far from it. But try it, because it could work for you, and then you don't have to worry about it, right? If CBD doesn't work, or you need more than the CBD, the THC level than you can find in your states, that's tough. I'm not going to tell anybody to break the law. All I'm going to say is you do what you got to do for your kid. And I'll probably just leave it at that, so we don't get anybody in trouble.
Yeah. And if Sam just wrote in here, and Sam, you missed it at the beginning, but Sam is asking, how old is Jagger, and when did all this start?
Jagger's 7, and I started. The very first thing we got with him was a heart condition at 3 months old. But about 1 year old is when we found out he had mitochondrial disease, and about 14 months old is when he got put on hospice.
Gotcha. And this one came in from Allison, and I'm going to hold off on not getting emotional on this night. So I just want to let everybody know, thank you again for all of your cards and everyone reaching out regarding Corinne. This is my therapy, so I need to let you know this is very much therapeutic for me. And now I'm going to get emotional to do what we're doing, because this is the passion that Corinne and I started quite some time ago. So Allison, John, you're such a gift to the world in doing this work, and especially after Corinne's passing. And much love and appreciation to Sebastien for what he's doing for his child and family. You guys are the true meaning of inspirational. So thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
That does mean the world to me, and I'm certain it means the world to Sebastien as well. We were thrown into this, and just like Sebastien was thrown into this with his family, and we have devoted our life to giving back. And so this is what we love. This is our passion. And, I wish things were different for Jagger. And, we have a lot of prayers going out for you, even after, our talk the other day, the feedback that we had with our interview was some of the most beautiful thoughts there. So
thank you, everyone,
and thank you for taking the time here to be on the show with us here. So any more questions for anybody here? We've talked about things. Or am I missing?
John, I think you got some question on the Q&A.
Let me see here. I have been asking those.
Okay.
Those are ones I have. Excuse me. My apology, everyone here. Let me see here. Is the quality? I missed these here. So is the quality of medical cannabis in Michigan as good as Colorado? It depends on the growers. It depends on if has it been tested. Michigan is a legal state. A lot of families that live up north are traveling, and it's easier to get to Michigan than it is to get to Colorado or California or Washington or Oregon. Quality is I think is all in the grower, but also making sure that quality control and they have testing labs. So if you're out there wanting to try medical cannabis, make sure that it is tested. Make sure that it is tested for mold, pesticides, metals, fecal matter. And that's my advice in regard. But I can't really say is Michigan as good as Colorado. Colorado is known as the recreational state. California has been known as a medical state. We've been legal out here since 1996. So, but I mean, I think there's good medicine everywhere. So thank you for that question. We have a hand raised. So great, our first hand raised. Let me see. I'm going to put you online here, Donna. So let me see if we can do this. This is exciting. So this is a new one for Sebastien. And we can move Donna over here. And Donna, let me try to get you up there online here, and you should pop up. So, bingo. There's Donna. So let me unmute you. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Thanks
Hi.
for being on.
I'm so sorry about Corinne. I just felt so horrible when I read that.
Yeah, and after mentioning it last week, we had a lot of people that wrote in too. So I appreciate the emails that people have taken the time to share their thoughts. I miss her every day.
I know you do. Anyway, and unfortunately, I was at work and I missed that webinar with that doctor that you had on the series. Yes, Dr. Frankel.
Mm-hmm.
Will you have him on again?
Yeah, we had a lot of people that wanted him to get back on. So we'll definitely have him on, and so we'll let you know.
So my question is, we live in Arkansas,
okay,
and we became a legal state last year, but they still don't have like anything going. Like, so can you buy, like, would it be legal, like if we went to Colorado and bought the THC and CBD oil and brought it back here, like if we got stopped or something, would we get arrested?
Yeah,
I mean,
and that you are crossing federal state lines, so now it's a federal offense. So even if you were California, even if the states are next to each other, California, and you want to drive across the border into Oregon, still that is a federal offense. Even if you have a legal cannabis card in a legal state and bringing it back to Arkansas, that is still considered illegal. Patients do it. Would I do it for a family member? You better believe it, but that's just me. So I'm not advising anybody to break the law, but that's what people are doing, which leads into a question here, Sebastien, for you, and Donna, please stay on here. Are you able to obtain medical cannabis for your son legally in Georgia? And how are you able to come back to your home state after Colorado with medical cannabis if you did have it? So I don't want you to get in trouble either.
No. So the first thing is, let me tell very quick why we came back. Jagger was doing so much better in Colorado, except for one thing, and that was his breathing. He never got used to the altitude, and because he had lungs problem with his mitochondrial disease, they keep telling us, it takes 2, 3 months, 5 months. It might take 6, 7 months for him. He never got used to it. So after 13 months, his breathing was getting worse and worse. So we had to move back. If not, he was doing better with everything: seizures, pain. Connectivity was better. He was more aware. But we waited until we passed a bill, HB1, Haley's Hope Act in Georgia. Actually, I was flying back and forth almost every week during session to lobby. Here's the thing. So in Georgia, we have legal possession. We have no legal access. So you got to be very inventive to get your cannabis. There are people that are like State Rep Alan Peake that is actually getting cannabis and giving it for free because you can sell it. So he's getting it from Colorado and giving it for free to people with a card. Unfortunately, there's 3,500 people or 3,400 people with a card. He can't supply to that many people. What I'm going to say about this, without giving up any secret, is I do what I got to do for Jagger, but just be careful and just don't talk about what you do.
Yeah. So Donna, I know I interrupted you and asked another question. Did you have any more questions here? And
like, would it be worth it? Like with Dr. Frankel. I mean, we live in Arkansas. He's in California, but he probably does those, FaceTime talks.
Yeah.
You pay for it because my son has a very fast growing liver cancer. and now it's in both lungs. And he's only 38 years old, and he has two little girls. And he wasn't serious, like, we were juicing for him, and I took him to Memphis to the naturopathic doctor that Chris Wark goes to, and spent all this money, and I got a Berkey water filter. Anyway, so now he's serious, and I'm just wondering if Dr. Frankel would be like the best bet to find out exactly how much THC and CBD he needs. I know we should do it rectally, like in suppository, because the cancer first started, it was around his portal vein.
Yep.
Is it worth it then to go to one of these doctors that might be able to help you so you have a better shot?
Yep. And I just put the link down here on the panel on the side here in this Q&A section. So I don't know if you can see that, Donna, on the bottom right of the link. And if not, you can go to unitedpatientsgroup.com and hit the consultation tab. And there you can schedule a time that best fits your schedule. And so our doctors and medical professionals consult with patients all around the world, as well as your doctors are more than welcome to sit in on the call if you like. But they go over age, weight, current health condition, any medications you may be on, and they will give you a protocol, dosing, formulations, and guidance. And so it literally will take the guesswork out. I'm a big fan of that, taking the guesswork out, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. What Jagger and what Sebastien uses for Jagger can be completely different for another child. As he was mentioning, THCA, Jagger didn't have success with THCA. Where maybe a lot of other patients, I know Jagger is more the expert in mitochondria. Sebastian's probably more of an expert in mitochondrial than I am. And so what he's seen with his I guess followers and other families that are following his story with his son.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, you can do that, and it really will take the guesswork out. And I think it's something that it's a good investment to do. A lot of families will do that. They'll travel to a legal state. They know exactly what to end up obtaining for themselves or their family. Sometimes they stay there 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, or sometimes some of them just turn around and go home, and how they get it back home is up to them. So we're not advising anybody to break the law, but that's what they do what they need to do.
Yeah, but I don't think that, I called Colorado trying to make an appointment with a doctor there to take my son to, and they told me that, like, if you're out of state, you can't get the medical, what they really need, like the really strong THC. She said that you've got to live in Colorado for a year before you are allowed to get that. That's what she told me.
I need to disagree with that, and I'll let Sebastien. You want to chime in here, because I know you guys only lived there for 13 months and you had access right away.
Yeah, absolutely. In Colorado, you got recreational use, so you can just go to any dispensary with a license if you're over 21. But if you want to go to a medical dispensary, you do need a red card for Colorado. For adult patient or anybody over 18, that just take one doctor's signature. And once you get that, you just have to show you're a resident of Colorado. So that's maybe what she was meaning. But there's a way to do that before you even go there. Like, I switched my cell phone bill, and I got the lease signed like even 2 weeks before we got there. So I had an address, and as soon as I got there, I switched my driver license to a Colorado license, because I already had a power bill. Because after like a week, you can call the power company and say, hey, I want a partial bill. So that'll prove that you live there. So that may be what she was meaning, that you have to establish residency. That's true for every state's medical program. But again, there's recreational in Colorado where you don't need to be a resident. And then there's a medical program where you have to be a resident, but that does not take a year. You can get that done probably in less than 30 days. So
terrible that she told me that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Call another one. Call another, or you want to email us, and I'll share the ones Sebastien's worked with. How about that?
Okay, can you tell me again, because I'm not seeing the question and answer thing right now at the bottom. What was the email and the web address you said about finding a doctor?
Yep, so you can go to unitedpatientsgroup.com, and that's unitedpatientsgroup.com, and hit the consultation tab. Or you'll see the tabs up on top, but the consultation tab will show you can pick a time and date that best fits your schedule. And if not, if you don't find it, or you have any questions, you can call and ask for me directly, and I'm more than happy to help you there, Donna.
All right, so how do we get a hold of you if we need to?
You can email me at info@unitedpatientsgroup.com, info@unitedpatientsgroup.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, and thank you very much.
You, and good luck with your son.
Thank you. Please pray for him. I'm so devastated.
Well, we're here, and we're here for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Huh?
Okay.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So thanks, Sebastien, for helping her with that. And so here's a question from another Q&A here. Are all medical cannabis dispensaries required to keep test results for cannabis for mold and pesticides? And
that's actually going to depend on the state, unfortunately. So John can probably talk about California better than I can. I can tell you in Colorado, it's not on the medical side, but it's on the rec side. I know that makes no sense, but the reason of that is because medical started before rec in Colorado. And when they say we're starting recreational and we go to make it mandatory, there were a lot of lobbying and people and dispensaries that lobby against doing it back, going backward and having the medical dispensary do that because it was going to cost them money, unfortunately. So you went backward in Colorado, but yes, it depends on which state you live. And I think my personal opinion is nothing should ever be sold without a full panel of labs of tests. But John can talk more about California because I'm not super keen on that, but
the new laws. So again, I just want to let everybody know that I want to remind our listeners this is for informational purposes only. We're not giving medical or legal advice, only sharing our experience. So, I don't want to get us in trouble or Sebastien in trouble either. So here's one that came in from Patty. I've heard mixed things about dispensaries near New York City, which is where I live. What can you recommend in New York State? And so you go out there quite a bit. So can you help with Patty on that one?
Well, I don't have any names to help her out, but what I can say is, yes, there's a limited number of dispensaries in New York. So what you got to think about is that the program is still new in New York. So I hope and I think and I pray that things are going to get better in New York State. Because the program is new, and when you go to a new program, you're going to growing pains and you have things like that happen. So I heard that for many people in New York, that the selection is not great and then there's not a lot of dispensaries, especially if you live outside of Manhattan. If you live upstate New York, it's pretty tough to get stuff and it's pretty expensive. Again, I think as the program grows, as there's more and more dispensaries, as there's more and more competition bring prices down and hopefully quality up. Doesn't always do, but it's supposed to. So for now, I understand your pain. It's kind of hard in New York, but hopefully that's going to change.
Yeah, and we do run into that too. So always do, and even if you do find one in New York, like I said, and Sebastien was saying, make sure it does come with test results. And this will lead into our next question. How do I know the CBD oil that I'm buying is legitimate? And I know we touched up on that at the beginning of the show. So if you want to hit that again, please.
Yeah, lab. Get the labs, get microbial, residual solvents, heavy metal, get all those like pesticide. That's another big problem that is, new. And that's the problem that is not a Colorado or California. It's all over the country. Those growers are getting put into a lot of pressure, especially with all those new recreational market coming out. And there's a huge demand. I mean, I don't know if people heard, but Nevada ran out of cannabis on the first day of recreation, or California was maybe not running out, but they were missing. So I mean, it's crazy because everybody wanted. So there's a lot of pressure on the growers, and when you put pressure on the growers, they go to take shortcuts. Some of them, hopefully not all of them. The bad one are going to take shortcuts, and they go to start using pesticide. So ask for a pesticide lab test. Ask for heavy metal, especially if you use CBD coming from hemp, industrial hemp. Ask for residual solvent. If it's a butane extraction, you want to make sure there's no butane left. You don't want to consume butane. That's really bad for you, right? If it's CO2 extracted, it's a little bit safer, so you don't have to worry so much about that. But as for microbial, does he have E. coli, mold, fungus, all that stuff grow in cannabis? It's a plant. It can happen. So get your lab test. If you don't know where the product comes from and you cannot get lab, don't use it. Simple as that. And remember, this is not about price. Some people are going to try to sell you really cheap stuff. This is something you put in your body or your loved one body. You want the highest quality. You want something safe. So, just make sure you get your lab. Make sure it's a clean, safe, tested product. That's the best advice I can give. And especially when it comes down to CBD, there's so many of them out there that try to sell it to you.
Yeah.
Just be careful.
And I'm gonna add to that too, is cannabis is not a one size fits all. More is not better. So, I know you can do trial and error, but if you have access to a medical professional that truly knows what he or she is doing, they will look at the age, weight, current health condition, as well as any medications you may be on. So more is not better. And I always talk about it, even when you have your pharmaceuticals, it doesn't say take 8 every 1 hour. It probably says take 1 every 8 hours. And the same thing with cannabis. More is not better. So, I just wanted to add that in there as well. Here's one that came in and has there been any success with memory retention or recovery or slowing down of dementia using cannabis? And there are quite a few studies, and we've seen that with THCA, which helps with inflammation, as well as CBDA. So that is yes. I know, in Jagger's condition, THCA is not helpful and did not work with him. So you were doing your own trial and error with that.
Yeah, absolutely. What helped with him with the part of the brain was actually CBD. Now, full spectrum whole plant CBD. So he had some THC and he had all the terpenes. I'm not talking just isolated CBD. But when we started with that, right away we saw some difference. Within a few days, he was better aware of what was going on. He was better eye traction, all things that we know work on the brain. And now we know more with the endocannabinoid system, and we know things that happen in the brain. But yes, it's going to be a lot of trial and errors. I will tell you that, not to scare anybody off, but especially when you're talking about PTSD and dementia and things like this, the wrong strain can make it a little bit worse. I've seen that before. So keep good notes. It's the worst strain can give the anxiety a little bit worse. So you might have to do a little bit of research on the strain, see what's working for other people, and you have to do some trial and errors, because now if you find the right strain, it can be life changing. But the wrong strain can actually make it a little bit worse. So just take it slow. Always start low and go up slow. That's the best advice on any of the cannabinoids.
Low and slow. And actually, do you know? GW Pharmaceutical with their product, Sativex. If you look at their dosing instructions, it says low and slow, and that's a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, and,
so low and slow.
Yep.
So here maybe you can help here. This is Pam. Hi, Pam. So will cannabis help with lymphoma?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It can help. Again, the best thing to do, I'm not a doctor, John's not a doctor. I say, John was saying he has a doctor that consult on his website. I think that's that's one of those conditions, and it would be great to consult a doctor.
Yep.
It can work. It can absolutely work. I've seen it before. And again, it's been different things that work for different people. So try to consult the doctor. Another thing to think about that is also the kind of medication you're taking right now is going to be very important. There could be interaction. So that's why you don't want to mess with that. And it's probably good to get a consultation.
Yeah. And the same thing here, Allison's writing again. Will it work with leukemia? So yeah, there is a lot of studies with blood diseases with medical cannabis. And again, I never want to say medical cannabis is the golden ticket, but I have seen it, and I'm certain you have as well. Here's another one. I heard cannabis has not been very successful treating sarcomas. I have heard opposite. I know Dr. Frankel spoke about that in our last meeting. So if you want to, and I know your initials there, CWCGA. So if you want to email me, I can do some research for you on that as well, on sarcomas. Let me see if there's another one. Let me see. Thanks for emphasizing the whole plant aspect.
Yes, all day long.
Yeah. Yes, and Pam, will cannabis help with neuropathic pain? So again, that's Corinne and I would speak at a lot of neuropathy groups and with diabetic groups, and so yeah, it does help with that. It's funny. we would go to these groups, and a lot of these patients were taking 5 to 8 oxys a day, and then they would try medical cannabis, even about 2 milligrams. And next thing you know, they were climbing the walls. They were, I hate the word stone, but they were stoned out of their mind. And they said, "I'll never try cannabis again." And I said, "Hold on. You're on 8 oxys a day." And so medical cannabis, even at the 2 milligram doses, can intensify a pharmaceutical up to 2 or 3 times. And so, as Sebastien was talking about earlier, weaning off medications, don't do it cold turkey, but, work with a doctor too, with that. Are there any work done with cystic fibrosis? Are you, have you done?
Yeah. I don't know of any work done. I'm sure of a study, but I do know that THC is a bronchodilator. So again, talk to a doctor, but to me, it would seem that THC probably help more with asthma than with CF, but it probably and there's a lot of inflammation based in cystic fibrosis, and cannabis, CBD, CBDA, THCA are great anti-inflammatory. So it's definitely worth trying. And again, probably one of the good ones to go to the United Patients Group website and maybe talk to a doctor or a nurse there.
Yeah. And if you get stuck or you don't see any answers or there, give us a call, and we're more than happy to help out as well. And I like it. These people are popping up here. So this one here is ISO is so-so. HTFCE is far superior, high terpene, full spectrum extract. So you want to touch up on that one?
I mean, I'm always for terpenes. I think you should make sure you get everything in your cannabis, or your cannabinoid, your terpene, or your amino acid, or your flavonoid. I'm a very big proponent of whole plant, full spectrum, and I don't like isolate. So yes, keep the terpene in the cannabis. Do not take the terpene away from the cannabis. Absolutely.
I love your accent, by the way.
Mine? Oh, thank you.
New Jersey, right?
Yeah. I usually tell people I'm from Kentucky, but
there you go.
They don't buy it.
So, or Donna from Arkansas. Donna, you didn't have an Arkansas accent. I was waiting for your accent there, Donna. So, anyway, I just want to thank you for being on. Let me see here. Okay, here crinogenic preserves those terps.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of extraction method, and the good thing about it is just in the few years I've been involved with this, and John's been involved with cannabis much longer than me, but in the few years I've been involved, I already seen technology doing amazing thing for extraction. Now you got like some really super critical CO2 that actually recaptures the terpene and put them back in. Cryogenic can keep the terpenes. I mean, the machine and the ingenuity that we see, it's typical of an American industry being developed. And the technology, even in the breeding, in the growing, how people can now breed plants that have low THC and high CBD or high CBC, things we didn't see even 3-4 years ago than we're finding now. So that's great. And I think the technology and, it's America at its best, really. It's a growing new industry, and we're seeing so many improvement and so many development. It's exciting. I'm actually excited of what we're going to come up with next. It's very exciting.
And she's saying, he or she's saying, God bless the breeders. And so,
absolutely, all day long.
Absolutely, all day long as well. So, well, Sebastien, I just want to thank you for being on with the show again this evening, and I want to thank everyone for listening and being patient for us to get our little technical difficulties out of the way. But I just again want to thank everybody for that. And I know Jagger's had a few issues the last few days, and so we'll be thinking about him and our listeners tonight. If you can say a special prayer for Jagger and for Sebastien and his wife Annett, you're in our thoughts. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to be on with us tonight. But this is John Malanca, the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Experienced. This is an interview series, and again, I want to thank Sebastien Cotte from our interview the other evening, A Father's Journey to Save His Son. And I commend you for being a parent, being a parent. And like you said, you didn't sign up for this, but the love that you and your wife has, you're doing for Jagger. I'm certain, he knows the love, and God and angels are watching over you too, man.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So all of our listeners tonight, and we send a prayer out to all you guys as well. If you're going through something, we're here for you if you want to talk about it, but just know that we're sending our blessings back out to each and every one of you. And Sue, hi Sue, you're live.
I got in late, so I'm not sure if if you've answered this question, but I have MS, and I want help. I'm tired of being in pain. Yep.
And what state are you calling from?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. So the MS, there's a company out of the UK called GW Pharmaceutical. It's probably one of the first pharmaceutical companies that is actually using true cannabis product, not synthetic. And their product is called Sativex. It's not available here in the US, but it is a 1-to-1 ratio, 50-50. So ask your local dispensaries out there if they do carry a 1-to-1. I'm not giving you medical advice, but I'm just sharing that's exactly what GW Pharmaceutical has for their product. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And if you want to GW Pharmaceutical, and if you want to email me directly, you can email me at info@unitedpatientsgroup.com, info@unitedpatientsgroup.com, and I'll send you some information on GW as well as their formulation specifically for MS.
Oh my God! If I didn't get all of that, will there be a way that I can get to you?
Email me. Yep, you can say attention, John, but info@United Patients Group, and I'll make sure that I get that information out to you, Sue. So
thank you.
God bless you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sue, you're still listening. I just wanted to say something. As I've seen it firsthand with several people, a 1-to-1 ratio do wonder for MS. So I wish you good luck. But it's really, I've seen it with friends of mine. It actually made a really big difference using a 1-to-1 ratio for MS. So I hope you get access to that, and that would help you.
Here's one for you, Sebastien. Do you know if there'll be any flowers sold in Texas with this latest bill passing?
No, Texas is one of those states that they're actually growing now, but they're only growing CBD.
Yep.
And they're growing stuff that you can get on the mail, pretty much. The same kind of things from Charlotte Web, Haleigh Hope, whatever. So there's really not a really big need for that bill in Texas. It was more a PR move than anything else.
Totally.
So the governor can say he did it, and actually, as a bill signing, Governor Abbott say that's it. That's the only cannabis bill I would ever sign. And I don't call that a cannabis bill because he only gives people with seizures, and even worse, with a doctor prescription, which is illegal for a doctor to prescribe it because it's Schedule 1 substance. So I don't even know if there's a single person in the state of Texas that was able to get a medical card as of today. That bill is a total shame, and it is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, and we get a lot of calls from Texas.
It's a big state.
A lot of Texas. Yeah, it is a big state. Maybe that's why we get so many calls. And that in Florida, we get a lot from Florida as well too. So, Sebastien, I just want to say thank you for being on. I know it's late for you now out there in the Eastern time zone. So I know it's past your dinner. So hopefully Annett has some. your warm food is still warm. And but again, this is Sebastien Cotte from our interview series, A Father's Journey to Save His Son. And again, this is John Malanca, your host and advocate for the Sacred Plant. And again, thank you for all your prayers and blessings from me and my family and Corinne. And I ask you to do the same for Sebastien and Annett for their son Jagger.
Thank you.
So God bless and safe travels to you. I know you have a big trip coming up as well, and good luck to you there. And I look forward to continuing our conversations. So
thank you.
Okay. So blessings to you and blessings to all of our listeners tonight as well. Thank you again, Zia, for being our technical difficulty people on here. So Elizabeth, good evening. Prayers for the health of Jagger. So thanks, Elizabeth. So God bless all. And Laura Lee, thank you and blessings. Allison, thank you again, guys. Have a blessed evening. And if you're driving home, drive home safely. Hi. Much love to everybody. We'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.